What's up, you book-reading nerds, and welcome back to the Lucid Nightmare. I'm your host, as always, Jay Schatzer, and today it is time that we are going to be taking it back to the paperback with a very, very special segment. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I've read the book and watched the movie over and over again. I'm kind of obsessed with it, and I wanted to make sure that I was in the right frame of mind before doing this, because it really is an awesome combination, both the movie and the book. But today, I'm going to be talking about The Keep. The Keep is completely awesome in both versions. I enjoyed them both, but they are drastically different in parts, but eerily similar in others. It's a weird conundrum to kind of explain, and I've been kind of racking my brain trying to compare which differences are probably the most impactful from the two, and it's all over the place. So let's first start out with let's start out with the novelization, I guess. So The Keep, F. Paul Wilson wrote this beautiful novel. It's probably one of my favorite books now. Right up there, my top 10, even top 5. Really enjoyed this one, and I love how fleshed out all the characters are in this, and it really delves into more religious aspects, and it has an entirely different tone from the film. So the film opted to eliminate a few things, but kept some of it intact. But the basis of this is pretty much a Nazi army is sent to the Dinu Pass to pretty much keep it safe for any invading armies coming through. So they're stationed there, but they start, there's a keep there, a castle. And this is more of a traditional castle with stonework and all that. But once they're there, they awaken this ancient evil that starts kind of consuming them, and it brings a big problem that eventually gets back to the head-ups in the German hierarchy, and they send in SS troops led by a cruel general, Kampfer, to pretty much stop the murders from happening of the soldiers' deaths by this weird entity. And that's where things start to clash. But then they call in a Jewish historian, and that's when the religious aspects really start to come into play in the novel. But that's the basic premise right there in both the novel and the film. The main difference is when Michael Mann came in his version, he opted to kind of make the Jewish historian not as faith-driven. So he's an atheist in this, but in the novel he's a very devout Jewish man whose faith is very sacred to him. So that's a really, really strange difference there that kind of upends a lot of the novel's ideas and themes that it sets up. So it's so hard to talk about this. It's all over the place. But so the religious aspect is very, very, very different. Also, the main villain is very, very different from novel to film. So, and I must say, if you haven't read the book, definitely read it without watching this video. You know, stop it right now, get it, read it, and then come back. But if you don't care about spoilers and knowing the differences, let's continue. But so in the novel, it is more of a classic vampire tale, I guess you could say. So the main Molasar is his name in the book. They don't even give him a name in the movie. He's more of an entity than anything else. Molasar is a vampire, and he's pretty much feeding on these soldiers, but he's feeding on them from their fear and hatred. So he's kind of an ancient creature that gets strength from chaos. Is pretty much a simplistic term to say it. But so he is growing stronger and stronger as he makes more hatred flow in the Dinu Pass. So that is also reflected in the villagers. The villagers start doing crazy shit, attacking each other, killing each other over just simple arguments. You don't see that in the film. You only see that in really blink and you miss it. With the priest that's in the town, he's eating an animal. It's just a really quick scene. I didn't even know what the hell was going on unless I watched it a few times, and I was like, oh, all right, that's what happened. Because it's just a really strange, fast scene. But yeah, like there's a lot of scenes in the village where the character of Magda in the novel, who is Eva in the movie, Theodore Cruz, the Jewish historian's daughter, she witnesses a lot of this stuff because she lives in the inn and is kind of interacting with them more. But that's an interesting concept in the novel, which I wish they would have fleshed out in the film, but I don't know if they did in the long 210-minute cut of the film. But yeah, it's a mystery of what's actually in that full director's cut that he first made. But trying to think of what else that they took away from there. But let's go on to the things that they do differently in the novel, or what they originally did that was taken out character-wise. So we'll focus on the characters. So the character of, let's go through a few of the characters. Comfer, the SS troop general head guy. He is rising up the ranks of the SS, and he is tasked with taking on what's going on at the keep, so then he can go on and make another concentration camp, much like Auschwitz. So it's to kind of further their stranglehold and killing off the Jews and all this other stuff that happened during the Holocaust. So that is his motivation. He's very cold, calculating, a cruel person, of course. And they flesh out his ambitions more in the novel and his mindset behind things. He's not just a black and white, I'm an evil character. So he has a lot of different nuances. And there's a history between him and the German general who's there, Warman. Warman and him clash, but they clash because they have a past where Warman saw him on the battlefield when he was a lot younger. And Comfer freaked out and he fled. So he knows he's a coward. So that's kind of how they kind of clash. They never liked each other. And Warman doesn't like the SS and their tactics. He's more, he has more of a noble heart, even though he is a German soldier that has helped bring Hitler to rise. So it's a lot of interesting, like, back and forth stuff with them in the novel. In the film, it's more superficial. They just don't like each other because they have different styles. But Warman is shown as a more sympathetic person in the film as well. He cares for Magda, Eva, and her safety, and he's more protective of her. So without being romantic or anything like that, he's just more of a decent human being in both versions. But he has a past as well in the novel that you don't know about. He has children. He has one son who has actually went into the SS ranks. I guess he would be a Hitler Youth, and he was against it. He didn't like it, and he kind of lost his son to Hitler through that aspect. So he has a lot more nuances to him that flesh him out more, make him even more sympathetic. And let's skip ahead before we go to the other characters. His demise is completely different from book to film. So in the book, he is killed by Molasar. It's so hard to get these names all right. He's killed by Molasar and then kind of used as a zombie throughout the rest of the movie. But he's hung. So it's disgraceful in that sense because he's a soldier, and he's kind of disgraced him through that, but he's also a zombie moving around. In the film, he's just killed by Comfer. He's just shot by Comfer after a altercation between the two when the film really starts to unravel at the very end. So it's two completely different situations and ways that he dies. And I'm trying to think of which one's the best one, but I do appreciate the novel because it is the first iteration of the story the original, and it does flesh out his character more. That you really do feel bad for him. I'm very sympathetic to what he was going through with his family and his situation there, and trying to keep tempers down. So really cool to see that kind of difference, and I'm curious to why they did it. I'm really not sure why they changed it up in the Michael Mann film. But let's go on to Theodore Kuza, who is the Jewish historian, a college professor, who is brought in to what is going on in this situation because he has prior knowledge of the keep. He was there doing like excavations and work on there. So it's somewhat similar, but like I said, he doesn't have faith in the film. In the novel, he has a huge faith and huge presence with his faith there. And that is kind of the difference between the vampire and the kind of evil entity that I almost would say is, it seems so, it's almost like a space age fantasy or something like this. The Molasar, or whatever the entity is in the movie that they don't really name from what I can remember at all, he's more of an evil presence of almost like ancient evil from beyond that you can't really grasp. They don't define him as a vampire or anything like that. So it's very interesting that way, but it's very different because you in the novel, you know so much about what's going on in his past, but in the film it's more of a it's all vaguely tapped upon. But Theodore Kuza is a cripple in both, so he's got that going for him in both movie and book form. But the faith is totally different. So the way that the evil entity seduces him in the movie, he just kind of heals him, and that's enough to get him on his side. But in the novel, he plays to his weaknesses in the faith, even though that's not really a weakness, but he gains more energy and life from screwing with his faith. So how do I even explain this? Well, in the novel, Molasar makes him believe that he is a vampire that has weaknesses that typical vampires would have. So the cross, he makes the cross that Magda has, he makes Kuza feel that it can ward him off. So he only does it around him to kind of prove that he is this ancient evil, that the Christian cross affects him. So that makes him start questioning his Jewish roots, that Christ was the true king and things like that. So it messes with Theodore Kuza in that sense, and he starts questioning his Jewish faith, and in that turn makes Molasar that much more powerful because he's making him doubt something that is so near and dear to his heart. So it's a very psychological play of cat and mouse with those two. It's very interesting in the novel, and it's void in the film because it's broken down into pretty much just he heals him and gets him the trust from that to show that he has that power. So Kuza's more susceptible to kind of follow his lead because he was giving him something that he thought was lost forever. So yeah, it's very fleshed out in the novel, which is amazing, and I love it. But I do appreciate the simplistic nature of the Keep film version because yeah, it just it has a great combination of surreal atmospheric locations and lighting and cinematography, and the Tangerine Dream score really makes it feel like an ethereal, otherworldly fantasy kind of film. So the film does an amazing job in bringing the visuals to light that came from the film, from the novel's writings. So that's what really brings the film into its own. But the characters, you can't go wrong with the in-depth character development in the novels. As in most all novel to film stuff, there's always something lost in there. You only have so much time to kind of get that all down. But yeah, and another character that you want to kind of emphasis, if you're thinking about that kind of character development, is Magda in the novel, which for some reason the film they name her Ava Cruz instead of Magda Cruz. But she has a whole fleshed out story where she is an older, I mean, she's an adult woman who should be married by now, in this culture that they're from, and so she sees herself as kind of cursed, that she'll never have happiness, that she's kind of resents the fact that she has to take care of her father who's handicapped, and she doesn't think she'll ever have love in her life. So that's where Glenn, in the novel, who is an unnamed stranger in the movie, but we come to find out that his name is Glacken. He is the kind of the main combatant of Molasar, who, funny enough, is named Rosalam in the very end of the novel. They just reverse his names. Very clever. But yeah, Glenn and Magda's love affair is a lot more fleshed out in the novel. There's a meaning behind it. It's not a very quick sequence like it is in the film, where they're all of a sudden in love and then they're doing it and they're head over heels. But in the novel, it's a gradual progression of them getting to know each other, her playing off, trying to find out who he is actually, and him always just asking questions about her life, and they begin to get close, and it's a more natural progression, which I enjoyed a lot. I thought it was a very humanizing way for Glenn's character, even though he is this ancient guy that's been battling this evil for longer than time can even say. And it was just really cool to kind of see him transform from kind of a unfeeling person or creature almost to a human man who has desires, wants and needs, and finds it in a woman who thought love would never come around her way again. So that was a cool little way that they did that. But and I think that's all for the main characters that are the differences in the way they flesh them out. But the ending is where it really really switches things up. In the ending in the novel, Glenn Glacken is fighting Molasar Rosalam, and they're going up the keep, and the stair keep, and they end up tumbling and falling, and Molasar is defeated, but Glacken is badly injured, but he is able to come back again and live his life with Magda. So it's a nice happy ending there. In the film version, it is pretty much vaguely kind of saying that Glacken and Molasar die at the same time during their clash, and it freezes on Magda, and she's like, shit, you know? So it's just like, it's a downer, weird ending in the film, but I think that's due to the production problems that it had and all of that story. But yeah, I can't say which one I like better than the other. I mean, you do love the characters a lot more in the novel, so you actually really love the you get wrapped up in the ending and knowing that they'll live happily ever after. So that's always a nice feel-good ending for that novel. But yeah, I love both versions very, very much, but I think I love the novel more just because it pulled at my heartstrings more, and I got more wrapped up in the characters. In the movie, I got wrapped up in the spectacle and the supernatural, strange atmospheric world of it's hard to explain. Like, the novel is just it's a vampire tale, and the film is like an ancient, I keep getting weird ancient alien feelings from it. Like, it's just a supernatural creature from beyond the stars or something like that, even though it's not really anything like that. But that's the differences too of the look and feel of Molasar from book to film. In the book, he's a more spectral kind of ghost in the beginning, and then turns into a natural or a traditional vampire kind of character who's very pale, pale, piercing eyes and things like that. In the film, it is a straight up monstrous looking creature straight out of Razorhead Rex or something. He's just a very weird, muscled, alien looking dude. I love that weird version of it, but it's like so different from the book that it's so hard to compare the two. They're just their own separate entities in my mind. And even though the film and book are so very similar in a lot of parts, I do almost view it as two separate, completely different stories, even though they do have similar arcs and beginnings and endings and characters and stuff like that. It's just, this is a contained story. The novel is a contained story on its own, and the film is a contained story on its own, but it's more of an experience of something weird and supernatural that you can't explain. So I love them to death, both versions. I highly recommend reading this and watching this film. It's just an experience that you really can't compare with a lot of films. Films to movie, or novels to film kind of difference. Yeah. Definitely love both of these ones. But guys, I think that's it. I've rambled on a lot, and I think I tackled everything I wanted to talk about miraculously. But definitely recommend both versions. Check them out. But that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like what I'm doing. And if you've read the movie or read the book, seen the movie, have your own thoughts, think I'm full of shit, leave it in the comments. I'd love to discuss it and just talk about the differences and how crazy it is. But I will see you guys later. The next Lucid Nightmare. See ya!